All right. Well, let me give you.
Everybody can hear me?
Yes, we can, Dr. Babadoost.
Very good. First, I have to apologize for missing probably 10 minutes. Just that I got trapped in snow and I was rushing to be there on time. This is my first time happened. I really apologize for this. So from now on, I'm going to be mainly talking about what observations I had in 2020 and what we have to prepare for 2021. As you see, my email is here. Communication would be through email with me. Most of you know already about my email. Okay, before going to main presentation, I put together a few points would be kind of highlight. In this presentation, I will talk about the cherry leaf spot. Cherry production is not huge in Illinois, but wherever we have serious problem. That's a leaf spot problem, both in the tart cherry as well as sweet cherry. And another problem we have had, I will talk more about that, young tree death. This has been a problem, and I will focus on this a bit later. Peter rot, as you know, Peter rot is a serious problem in Illinois, not so far as much in the north, but is coming. Fire blight, you know more than I know about fire blight. However, the reason I put here the fire blight in one of the orchards, at least one of the orchards in northern Illinois, they brought nursery trees and most of them had fire blight. What is importance of the fire blight is not really so much serious in the past, I would say 11 years in Illinois has been under control. However, if we bring some fire blight from, let's say, or New York or far west in Washington or Oregon, they do have resistance of the pathogen, Erwinia amylavora, to streptomycin. Streptomycin is the best chemical we use to control fire blight. We do not have any resistance in the bacterium to streptomycin. But if you bring, let's say, some trees or some samples from Michigan, and very likely we will bring a streptomycin-resistant bacterium from Michigan. If happened, you bring some nursery stuff and they are infected, and you have to get rid of them. Burn them, practically burn them. Get rid of them, not just a pile on the orchard, but burn them as soon as possible. If we introduce Erwinia amylavora resistance from Michigan or from New York or some other states, they will be really disaster. If there is a question, well, you can let me know, please. I'm going to go first the cherry leaf spot. Leaf spot, here is the cherry leaf spot. I don't want to identify what orchard had really serious problem, but probably, you know, whoever is growing a cherry, either tart cherry or sweet cherry, we have serious problem. Even I do have one cherry trees in my yard, and it had problem too. So we had this kind of problem in cherry, and when I visited, was late August, it was defoliation. This is what I saw, defoliation. This is not very good. And I spent lots of time in there, but fungus, Glomerilla, JP, and has different name in the past, had different name, but you don't worry about the name. It goes tart cherry, sweet cherry, and English cherries as well, all of them. And the affected parts are the leaves, mainly leaves. And sometimes goes to fruit and the fruit stem. But the leaves are the main target. Tart cherries are more susceptible. That's what I saw. Tart cherry was more susceptible. Here is the life cycle. If you want to know really how to take care of this particular disease, this is what we have. Life cycle. Right now we are in winter, where the fungus is, the pathogen is in the leaves on the ground. This is very similar to scab, apple scab. The leaves is carrying the pathogen from the last year to this year, or 1 year to another year. But this pathogen may produce two kinds of reproductive system. One is called asexual, is mainly ascospore. Another asexual called Conidia acervus. All of them pretty much comes when the trees start flowering. And then after that infection takes place on the leaves, then the cycle repeats. As you see up here, the cycle will repeat. That's what we have, the disease throughout the summer, beginning spring throughout the summer, and we have problem. Otherwise, if we don't do, we will lose the trees. Here is some symptoms. First symptom is red to purple circular spot on upper surface of the leaves. That's first fungus lands on the upper surface of the leaves and produce spot. Then fungus gradually moves down under side of the leaves with the brown spot. That's when we see defoliation. Disease management basically move the leaves on the ground in the fall. I mean, that right now we have snow. We can't do it. If you did not do it early spring. So then fungicide application is essential and has to be from bloom through the end of the season. Could be September. Depends when really we finish the season. Not to finish the harvesting. We may harvest, but leaves are there. Leaves will get infected. When leaves get infected, there will be defoliation. They will be affecting the buds for the following year. So application of the fungicide is essential through the season, would be September. We do have a good compound affecting this disease. Is Bravo weather stick, is very cheap, very effective. This is the contact fungicide. Another one is Raleigh. Raleigh is a systemic fungicide and the frag code of 3. And if we alternate them, let's say at 7 or 10 days interval, would be just fine. This is all I had to really briefly talk about cherry leaf spot. If there is any particular question or any comments, we can discuss right now.
Dr. Babadoost, there isn't a question yet about
Yes.
cherry leaf spot, but there was a question on fire blight, on when to treat.
Why not we keep the fire blight? I'm coming to a little section on fire blight. I can
Sure.
answer the question at that time.
Sounds good.
Right now, pretty much we focus on the cherry leaf spot. Oh, there is no question on cherry leaf spot, correct?
Not at this time.
Okay. We go apple disease. Here are the apple disease, basically in the north. One, we have abiotic problem. I'm going to show it. Started a few years ago, still going on every year, mainly on one variety, but is not really affecting the yield. Fire blight, Erwinia amylava. We had really outbreak of fire blight in 2008 and 2009. We did 3 years of investigation we investigated the pathogen, we investigated somewhat epidemiology and also management. I'm going to come back. Scab is with us. Practically last year, I did not see scab in the north. I'm going to be covering gymnosporangium, rust. I saw more rust in 2020 in the northern Illinois than ever before. Why is that? Probably was related to spring management of the disease. Sooty blotch was not really issue. I'm going to be covering, was not really issue. Similarly, fly speck was not really issue. Everybody did so good job. Then fruit rots, beetle rot. Beetle rot is not huge, but it's common. We collected some sample last year and in the past, but it's coming. Black rot and white rot was not really issue. This is just a very brief. Here is on the honeycrisp. Honeycrisp, the yellowing of the leaves start later in the spring and goes up to the end of the season. Sometimes is really more intense. Some years are not so intense. Start with little spots on the leaves. Gradually, whole leaf might become really yellow. I have not seen any really impact of this particular abiotic disease in the fruit yield or fruit quality. I would say just that this is basically for honeycrisp problem, and don't worry it, and very little is known about that. Some kind of physiology related and some kind of very likely sugar related in the plant, but we don't know a whole lot. Since we're not going to be losing any yield or quality, nobody really making investigation on this particular issue. Apple tree death. You should be very careful of this one. Apple tree death. Somewhat, I have noticed this one in the, I would say, past 4, maximum 5 years. We did not have a lot of apple tree death. But 3 years ago, 2 years ago, I saw more like this. Happens anytime during the season. And was so, this is basically occurred in the past 5 years, only from central to northern Illinois. When I say central, for example, Champaign-Urbana is central, up to northern Illinois, Wisconsin border. Nothing in the south. We don't have this kind of problem in the south. That's what we have, just one state, but not very unique, very different. Occurred long established to first time established orchard. I have seen this disease in the orchard more than 30 years, 40 years of history. But I have seen this disease in the first or second year establishment. That was really puzzling. Problem is not rootstock or a sign specific. I was investigating whether certain rootstock are susceptible or certain sign are susceptible, not really very specific. I have seen on almost every apples. For example, in Champaign, in some apples, let's say in Rockford area, in some others, in other locations in the north, in other varieties. So what happened in 2019, in one of the orchards, we detected Phytophthora. That was relatively central Illinois. I thought this is the color one, or this is the related to the root rot. Then we tried to investigate Phytophthora problem. Then, as we collected samples from different orchards, we saw not really Phytophthora, all sorts of issues. For example, we collected samples and the culture, and sometimes Alternaria we saw, sometimes penicillium involved, and different bacteria, different fungi. So then what was the conclusion? The conclusion, well, here it is, as I mentioned, the conclusion was, here it is the symptoms. Trees are dying. I also investigated whether the trees coming from certain area, certain nursery might be bringing the problem. Not so. Different orchard brought apple trees from different nursery, and we could not correlate any particular issue. After really much observation and culturing, and showed that this is not really a fungal problem. Fungal is the second issue and second problem. This is rather a winter problem, rather with a horticulture problem. So here is in the yellow, apple tree death is in central to northern Illinois, is an abiotic issue. Some of the orchards in northern Illinois, I saw, rows of the 3 years, 4 years apple trees die or dying. The problem is related to winter injury by rootstock by some. There are lots of interaction. I do not have all the data or all the result to tell you what to do. All I can say, we need a horticulture research to really evaluate rootstock establishment in Illinois, sign establishment in Illinois, winter injury problem, and other stuff. This needs a huge research problem to investigate and find out what's going on. But all the diseases in my portfolio, I'm responsible for about 79 different vegetable and fruit crops. Each of them have diseases, and every year we have some kind of new issue just arising. And this is horticulture problem. I will not be able really take responsibility to investigate this problem. But I know tree death is very serious, and we should have a horticulturist really start investigating this one. I will be more than happy to help. But if I really get involved in this particular, I have to put aside all of my project on other vegetables and other food. With this one, if there is any questions or comment in the tree deaths, we can discuss it. Seems to me there is no really question related to this particular issue. When we go apple fire blight, apple fire blight or pear fire blight are basically the same. When we talk about fire blight, mostly in Illinois, people talk about shoot blight. Shoot blight is just the one symptoms of fire blight. We do have blossom blight. We do have fruit blight. We do have shoot blight. We do have a canker. We do have the fire blight killing the trees. And we do have infected rootstock, M9 particularly, M9 and 26. All of them prevalent in Illinois. But what is the eye-catching is shoot blight. When we talk about fire blight, everybody think about shoot blight. Shoot blight is just one of them. This is a disease all over Eastern half of the United States. You come to Illinois, you come to Missouri, you go to Ohio, you go North Carolina, you go, let's say Michigan is terrible. As I mentioned, we investigated for 3 years. We found we can manage this disease effectively. And since 2010, I have not seen any serious problem of fire blight in any orchard in Illinois because we've taken care of them very well. What is this one? Prune. Pruning, winter pruning. Prune, blight, blighted shoots, and the cankers. And the summer pruning could be pruning the shoots, but when? In the sunny day. If we do in sunny day, you shouldn't worry about just spreading the disease. Chemical application. Chemical application, copper at silver tip. This is essential. We have investigated, this is essential. Copper, we have all sorts of the coppers. All of them are very effective. What does copper mean? What does copper do? Copper just we spray, that's the time the bacteria coming out from the canker, oozing out. When we have the copper on the trees, then the bacterial cells will die. That's the whole copper does. After that, we have to use streptomycin. Streptomycin is the most effective compound against this disease, this pathogen. When during the bloom and after hailstorm. If you use Mary blight or Cooker blight, this is perfect. It helps a lot. Other than that, traditionally, you have to apply from beginning of bloom at 4 or 5 days interval to make sure that you cover. So, but we have to consider in the Mary blight program, for example, the forecasting program takes care of temperature and the moisture. Because this bacterium is pretty much related to availability of the moisture and temperature. If there is no moisture, there will be no fire blight. If there is temperature is low, they will be lower than 65, lower than 60, there will be no blossom blight. If we don't have blossom blight, unlikely we will have shoot blight. However, in Illinois, usually we have rainstorm during the season. We get shoot blight from that too. All of us have come to the conclusion that using more than 4 times of streptomycin will end up having a resistance to this particular antibiotic. So we should try to limit our use for 4 times. Application of the apogee in the late bloom, from the full bloom to end of the bloom, has been proven very effective. I don't have much data, but all my observations and the input by the growers in Southern Illinois show that application of the apogee is very effective in Illinois. Other states do the same thing. And make sure that not to bring any trees or plant pots with fire blight from outside Illinois, for example, Michigan, New York, Oregon to Illinois. They have streptomycin resistance. And if you feel streptomycin resistance, we have identified cassigomycin. Cassigomycin is used in Michigan instead of streptomycin, as streptomycin is not effective. But cassigomycin is not as effective as streptomycin. But if we have to use it, we have no choice to use it. We have tested, and it is effective in Illinois too, but not as much as streptomycin is. I see lots of question 13 there. Please, Sarah, please let me know. One by one, we can discuss.
Sure. We have a question in the chat box, Dr. Babadoost.
Okay.
One of our growers is specifically asking about streptomycin on pear production as he grows pears. And when it comes to pears, do you start to spray streptomycin after the branches show shoot blight, or is it shortly after bloom? He also raises bees, so he's trying to be mindful of that too.
That's correct. The bacteria, Erwinia amylavora for fire blight, cannot get into the plant unless there is an opening. Opening could be from blossom during a bloom, that's a natural opening, or from the injury. If there is no injury and no natural opening, bacterium, millions of bacterial cells will not be able to get into the plant. So application of this streptomycin on pear, similar to apple, would be necessary during the bloom. To my knowledge, I have not heard any negative effect of streptomycin on the bees. However, to be a little bit in the safe side, I do not have any really data to show. I have not heard from anybody possibly streptomycin is affecting bees. And if you want to be a little bit in the safe side, maybe use streptomycin in the morning, because bees need really a little bit of warm condition to be able to fly. Is that good enough? Whoever has the question.
It is, and someone else in the chat box also mentioned, potentially a spraying at dusk. Bees are not typically foraging at that time as well.
Right, and once again, either in pear or apple, really we do have lots of rainstorm after bloom period is over, and that causes shoot blight too, because that particular storm makes injury and opens avenue for the bacteria to get into the shoots, and they just cause shoot blight. That has happened too, not very often, but sometimes could happen. Okay, go ahead. Other questions if you.
That's the only question I see right now.
Okay.
With it, there is a question. There was a statement about bee gut bacteria and streptomycin, which we might have Dr. Athey discuss perhaps at the end, if more people are concerned or
okay
answered.
Okay. No other comment or question?
Not at this time.
All right, let's continue on. Okay, apple scab. Apple scab is the springtime disease. And when we talk about apple scab, and particularly management of apple scab, really we refer to also cedar apple rust, or I would say rust. Usually, occasionally we do have more than one rust in Illinois, but cedar apple rust is the most common. And also powder mildew. Powder mildew, I would say, is not really an issue in Illinois. I haven't heard anybody talking about neighboring state about powder mildew too. However, if you have same powder mildew, if we have an effective management of apple scab, it will take care of the rust and also powder mildew. Once again, last year, I noticed the rust, more rust in Northern Illinois than ever in the past 21 years. That was surprising how that ended. Apple scab is multi-cycle disease. Rust is just a single site disease. It comes in the spring, that's it. It does not repeat itself. Here is the cycle of apple scab. You have seen probably this slide in the past. Only I have to emphasize that the pathogen is in the leaves on the ground. That's the best way to take care of the leaves, get rid of the leaves on the ground to just minimize or even prevent sometimes apple scab development, because fungus is nowhere, only in the leaves. So what happened in 2012? We had serious problem in apple scab. What was it? We found isolate resistant to several very common scab fungicide. One of them was resistant to strobilurin. Sauron used to be widely used, take care of scab. Another one was Raleigh, EMI fungicide, frag code of 3. We could not use that anymore. Another fungicide historically used for apple scab was Dodine or Dodine, frag code of N. The isolate we found in 2012 in Illinois were resistant to all this fungicide. That was really some stressful for me. I rushed in somewhat north, I would say Western Illinois to put up an experiment. It went very well. We found very good fungicide, effective against apple scab fungus. However, only fungicide is not good enough. I have been recommending ever since 2014, mow leaves on the floor. And when we mow the leaves on the floor, they will decay much faster, and the reproductive body of the fungus will not develop. To enhance decay of the leaf particles, we use urea, nitrogen, spray about 40 lbs, pounds of urea in 100 gallon per acre. Some of the growers say, oh, this is too much nitrogen, probably will not very good for the trees. But I have not seen or heard any negative impact. This really helps to facilitate decay of the leaves and get rid of the fungus. Spray crabtree apples next to your orchard. If you do have crabtree apples, spray them. In the South, a few years ago, in the South, we had a problem. When I visited, I realized, next to apple orchard, there was a graveyard, and there was crab apples providing inoculum to the orchard. And ever since they sprayed those crabtree apples, and we have no problem. Spraying trees from green tip to about 10 days after pedal fall, what we call first cover spray. This is the period. If you are spraying your trees with the effective fungicide from green tip until about 10 days after pedal fall, you should not have scab at all. I do have tons of the data to support this one. If you don't, then it will repeat the cycle and we will have the problem. This is the spray recommendation I have developed in Illinois. And the people using in the past, I would say 5 years. And I would say practically, I have not been able to collect the infected apples in the past 2 years, even for my classwork. at green tip. You have to start at green tip. Mancozeb, like for example, Manzate Pro, and plus Inspire Super. As you see, Mancozeb is contact fungicide. Inspire Super is systemic. Then half-inch green Mancozeb plus Fontalis. Fontalis is systemic compound. Tight cluster, Mancozeb Inspire Super, coming back. Apple, pink, Mancozeb Fontalis. Every week, 1 week apart. Apple bloom, Mancozeb Inspire Super. Pedal fall, Mancozeb Fontalis. You may go even the first cover, or you can stop here. Mancozeb Inspire Super. All of them legally according to the label. We're not exceeding anything extra. For example, Mancozeb, like Manzate Pro stick, all spray at 7-day interval. Mancozeb 3 lb per acre, Inspire Super 12 ounce per acre, 12 flow ounce, and Fontalis 20 flow ounce per acre, and perfect. Okay, this is for, we take care of not only scab very well, but also rust and also powder mildew. Even powder mildew is not a big problem. I see there are some numbers. If there's any question regarding scab or spring diseases of apples, then we can discuss it.
So one of the questions is, what time of year are you spraying urea for control of scab? Would this be, say, end of season, November for us in Northern Illinois?
Well, in Northern Illinois, we have quite much snow compared to Central or Southern Illinois. We did not have lots of snow in Champaign area until about 10 days ago. But right now, almost 1 foot there. In Northern Illinois, Rockford, and other areas, we do have snow. Under the snow, the decay of the leaves goes really fast. And it would be much better idea to spray later in the fall, after leaf falling on the ground. Just to mow them, you cut in the small pieces, then apply nitrogen, urea.
Okay.
If you did not do it up to now, this year, you can do right after this year. You can do right after the snow is gone. And but next year on, probably would be a good idea to start later in the fall, before the snow comes, after leaf falling. Okay, more question?
Yeah, there's an additional question. So for a smaller orchard, if you say mow your leaves in the fall, apply some compost, and finish in late spring by leaving the grass grow taller to minimize any kind of splash of spores to the leaves, could this be a strategy on a smaller scale?
That could be any size. This could be this suggested came after years of investigation. This would be good for everything, but in the small, if somebody has, let's say, maybe not just the mowing, maybe just using blowing and the collecting the leaves and the burying the leaves in the ground. Doesn't have to apply nitrogen. Just a few trees compared, let's say, 100 acres of apple orchard is very different. This is just to get rid of the leaves on the ground. Overseas, I was in overseas for some times, and the trees were big, not just the dwarf trees. And I used to say, go ahead, and they had sheep and the goats. I used to say, go ahead and graze them. And the animals grazed the leaves, and there was no leaf left for the winter. And finally, scab was under control. But right now, we don't have the animals to graze, or trees are so small, and they may be damaged by animals. So by blowing and collecting and the burying would be fine.
Okay.
More question?
Those are the only two I've seen.
Okay, then I continue on. Let me see how we're doing. Yeah, we're doing fine with the time. Okay, summer disease of apple. Summer disease of apple mainly is apple black rot, apple bitter rot, apple white rot, apple sooty blotch fly spot. All of them really are related to moisture. Moisture, mainly rainfall, but also night dews. When it comes after, let's say, end of July, we may have really long dews. That's not splashing, but also that helps to the fungi to just infect the fruits. And the sooty blotch and the fly speck is not really huge. It is huge in the anytime we don't spray. And in the south is more problem than in the north. Black rot. Black rot is not really a big deal in Illinois. Some growers sometimes misidentify, but so far I would say, to my knowledge, the black rot is not a problem. And the white rot of the apple in the left bottom comes very late. I have not seen the white rot before, let's say, August 15, even in Southern Illinois. And usually we should expect about later August or September, even October. What is the problem is apple bitter rot. Apple bitter rot is right now is the problem. Not huge yet in Illinois, but is getting more. And anytime there is a question, just to let me know and we can discuss. This is bitter rot. Bitter rot used to be not huge, but I would say much was on empire trees. Wherever we had empire in central Illinois and the southern Illinois, we had a problem and we had a management problem too, but other varieties were pretty safe. But after we got Honeycrisp with Empire, just providing huge inoculum for other varieties too. In the past 2 years, I have seen bitter rot on most of the cultivars. Not only Empire, not only Honeycrisp, but also Golden Delicious, Jonathan, even some green apples, surprisingly. So it is getting more and more. And we have to take care of it as fast as possible, as accurately as possible. Lesion, if you see in the picture, these are from Illinois. Lesion start small on the left, gets a little bigger and a little bit sunken. This is depressed. And you see in the middle, third from the left, you see spores. There are millions of spores up here. They can just, by splashing rain, they can go and infect apple fruits. So it is very serious. This disease could start from sexual, but mostly asexual fungi, all of them related. But we have seen sexual reproductive body and more asexual reproductive body, what we call Quinadia in Cervilla. We did field survey in 2019 and 2020 to really clarify what is the incidence, what is the severity of this disease in Illinois. Without really knowing what is going on, we may not be able to really offer a good management. Also, identifying of the pathogen species. We trying to conduct laboratory fungicide testing. We do not have results out yet, but we doing. Orchard fungicide. Orchard fungicide, if you know, we started in 2017 and 2018 in Northern Illinois and Western Illinois. In the commercial orchard, it did not work. Fortunately, I got a block of the Honeycrisp in Urbana in 2019, and we started our experiment. And it has been going better than expected. I show you how. So in 2019, these are the apple orchard. How many? I believe 22 apple orchard where we just visited. And you see most of the orchard in the south have bitter rot. But in far west and north in 2019 were fine. What does this mean? Again, like bringing a fire blight from other state. If you are bringing apples from the orchard, they had bitter rot, very likely you may be bringing the infected apple, and then you will have bitter rot in your orchard. In 2020, last year, more apples visited. In the far south, you see lots of orchards. Almost every orchard has bitter rot. But one in the Quincy did not have any bitter rot and does not. When we come a little bit north, Peoria and north, in Champaign we do have. In Rockford area, yes, we do have bitter rot right now. It's expanding. Please take their recommendations seriously. Otherwise, when this disease establishes, that would be very difficult to get rid of. Just the prevention is much easier than really taking care of it after established. So what we found in 2019, out of 22 orchards, we had 12 orchards with the bitter rot. The highest losses in Empire variety was 63% in southwest of Illinois. In 2020, we had 30 orchards. 20 of them had bitter rot, and in one orchard, all apples in Empire variety lost, 100%. You know, when we went to collect the sample, barely we could collect some infected apples just still hanging on the trees. The apples were on the ground, very surprisingly. So, what about fungi? What kind of fungi we have? Originally, we thought we had one fungus causing a disease. If we don't do research, we would not know what is exactly going on. You see this one, different isolates from different locations of Illinois, and very different. What we have identified so far, we have identified a species called Calotatricum furine. This is the most prevalent. Second is Calotatricum siamens. That is not as prevalent as the first one. Just about 1 month ago, we identified the third species, not very prevalent, but in Illinois. Where did it come from? We don't know. Maybe from the south, maybe from Kentucky, maybe from East Coast somewhere. Maybe somebody brought apple from somewhere else and brought that species too. We do have species complex, not only one species complex, at least two species complex. That's what we have to really be very careful, do research, very careful, analyze data, and get conclusion. So we haven't finished yet. We continue on, and for third year, we will have another orchard visit, another orchard experiment. This is the orchard experiment on Honeycrisp at Urbana, Illinois, University Farm. In 2019, 12 treatments, that was the beginning. I was really careful to get some idea. 12 treatments performed at 7-day, 10-day, and 14-day interval. Based on the result from 2019, the experiment was repeated with 9 treatments, only 10 days and 14 days interval, because we did not have to have 7 days. What were the results? This is 2019. We selected some potential fungicide. One was Capton, and one was Nanopro, a bacteria Nanopro with a kind of copper fungicide. Reliant is the phosphonate, and the Nanopro, and Aprovia, Meruvan plus Capton at different intervals, 7-day, 10-day, 14-day, and Profite plus Capton, Zyram plus Capton, Topsin plus Capton. All of them were very good, even 14 days. The disease developed in control plots, and the plots with Reliant with Nanopro. So we concluded that some of the fungicide, particularly including Capton, is the best. I'm going at the end talk about that. In 2020, with the 9 Meruvan plus Capton at 10 days. The rest of them, all of them 14 days. Meruvan plus Capton 14 days. Meruvan plus Capton alternated Topsin plus Capton. Meruvan plus Capton alternated Flint plus Capton. Aprovia plus Capton alternated Flint plus Capton. Meruvan Capton alternated Profite plus Capton. Meruvan plus Capton alternated Zyram plus Capton. Topsin plus Capton alternated Flint plus Capton. As you see, the disease developed only in control plots. None of the treatments had any disease at all. Some of the trees, aside from our experiment, had 100% losses. Even the Golden Delicious had 100% losses. So what is my recommendation with all this? As you see, Meruvan is perfect. Capton is perfect. Then Topsin is good when is used with Capton. Flint is good when used with Capton. Profite is good when used with Capton. Even Zyram is good when used with Capton. So Capton is the key. Capton is the key. What else Capton cannot do by itself? What else? We do have Meruvan. We do have Aprovia. We do have Flint. We do have Profite. We do have Topsin. We do have Zyram. but we have to really rely pretty much on Captain and Merwa. So I put the frac codes. What are the frac codes? Approvia 7, but PHI 30 days. Approvia is relatively new fungicide, is good, but we do have PHI 30 days. 30 days is too long for harvest. Captain is M, frac code 0-day PHI. Flint, frac code 11, 14 days of interval. That's PHI. That's okay. Marijuana is 2 fractions, frac code of 7 and 11, 0 days PHI. Prophyte 33, 0 days PHI. Hobson M, frac code 1, PHI 1. Xyram M, 14 days. We do have right now ammunition, very good ammunition, even better than I expected originally. And no question, some of the growers even in South Central Illinois follow the recommendation. Last year, I couldn't find any really infected apple. In 2019, we had infected apple, but last year I did not collect. But those did not really follow the recommendation. They had serious problem in the South. So first, do not allow beetle rot to your orchard. This is the first step. If you want to bring apples from other orchard, bring from the orchard. They did not have beetle rot, at least in the varieties. Cultural practices are essential. If you don't do cultural practices, no matter how much fungicide to load on the trees, it's not going to work. Other day, I gave this one. Every fungicide has a potential because of the some limitation on functional group. We can usually use 1 molecule of fungicide to neutralize 1 spore or occasionally 2-3 spores, not more than that. So if we have certain number of molecules of fungicide, we putting on the trees and a lot more spores are coming, they're going to make disease. So essential is cultural practices. What are those cultural practices? Remove mummies and dead woods and burn them before end of the bloom period. Why we have to do before end of the bloom period? Because this particular disease starts at the end of the bloom and maybe in the last part of the bloom. We don't have all the details yet. We will investigate. But make sure you do not have dead woods piled up. You do not have any mummies infected in the previous year hanging on the trees or on the ground. Otherwise, they will provide inoculum. Use effective fungicide beginning at pedal fall. But if you are spraying mancozeb and Fontalis at pedal fall, mancozeb is very effective against this pathogen. But mancozeb has limitations, 77 days PHI. You can probably use sometimes in May, maybe even in June, but beyond that one, you can't use mancozeb. Any mancozeb related fungicide. These are the recommendations from me, not from me only, from the research we conduct in Illinois. Marijuana plus Captain, alternated with Hobson M plus Captain, or Marijuana plus Captain, alternated with Prophyte plus Captain. Begin summer disease management at pedal fall. Spray at 10-day or 14 days interval. I would say if I did not report where you did not observe bitter rot in your orchard in 2020, you don't have to go 10 days. 14 days would be fine. But the orchard in the northern Illinois had bitter rot, at least on the varieties where we had bitter rot, spray at 10 days interval, cut them down, just to prevent accumulation of fungicide, accumulation of the pathogen inoculum in the orchard. With this one, I bring to the end. If we do have any questions or comments, I would appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Dr. Babadoost. We did have one question. I don't think you covered it, but we have some folks that are growing cherries and growing some peaches too. Is there any suggestion for brown rot control on the cherries and peaches?
I have not seen brown rot peaches in Illinois. We do have a good compound. In fact, brown rot is so bad. We initiated the project beginning last year. We will have 3 years to investigate. The best one would be spray. We do have 2 really season for brown rot of peaches, stone fruits overall. The first is at the bloom. At the bloom, the best really would be chlorothalonil, like a Bravo. The Bravo weather stick is very, very effective. But Bravo weather stick is not as effective as later on. When it comes to end of the season, we do have bunch of the fungicide very effective. For example, we do have topsinane, for example, is very effective. We do have strobilurins, like Savron, is very effective. In the guide, we listed all fungicide. Most of them are effective at later in the season. When I say later in the season, is when the fruits start ripening. That's the time. Between the bloom until ripening, fungus is in the plant, but quiet. Will wake up when the fruits start getting brown, it's ripening. That's the time we have to spray. And it's cheap and they're very effective during the bloom, just to spray chlorothalonil. Later on, spray, let's say, topsinane or strobilurine. More question or comment?
Additional question. Let's see. There's an additional question about the same fungicides work on apples. I think John is asking. He's growing some stone fruit, and he's wondering if some of the fungicides he's using on them would also work fine for his apples. Or I think that's what he's asking.
Yes, some fungicide would work in both of them. For example, one of them is Captan would be good. Captan would be good in cherry. Captan would be on apples as well. Another one is in Mancozeb. Mancozeb would be good, but apples, we do have 77 days PHI. And another one would be chlorothalonil. Chlorothalonil, like a Bravo, we can use both of them. If he is able to send me an email, and I would put together some kind of recommendation. And if he explains how many trees, peach trees or stone fruits he has, and how many apple trees he has, I will put them together. However, mainly we cannot season long just shave the spray on both of them. Sometimes we do have different diseases on apple, different diseases on stone fruits. We have to use different fungicide. But I will do my best to put together and recommend.
Okay, great. And I have put into the chat box the Midwest Fruit Production Guide. Elizabeth Wally also has the spray guides available for sale, and I'm going to put that link in the chat box if folks are interested in purchasing them or downloading them as a PDF.
Oh, on the spray guide. The spray guide had two problems, one last year, one this year. Last year in the spray guide, if somebody is saving a spray guide from 2000 to 2020, there was a statement, do not mix marijuana with Captain. That was wrong. In fact, mix with marijuana with Captain. That's the correct one. It has been corrected. Another point was using Mancozeb, and Mancozeb is several commercial names with the Mancozeb available. One is, for example, Manzate, one is Pancozeb, one is Rofer, and all of them are the same. In one page for Apple, only one of them mentioned. Do have, let's say, Manzate, that's Mancozeb 2, perfect. You go ahead, use them. There's nothing wrong. And Pancozeb is perfect. Go ahead, use them, nothing wrong. Always, you know, this is not the peer-reviewed publication. Always there are some mistakes, some kind of typo. So if there's any question, just drop me an email. I would answer right away. If I don't know answer, I will get for you.
Any additional questions? And please note that we have we've changed the feature, and you can unmute yourself if you'd prefer to ask your question over audio instead of the chat box.
I'm sorry. Now, what is the point?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, sure.
For our group,
Sure.
they can unmute themselves.
I will make handouts from my presentation and send it to you. Or put in the box, and it will be available to anybody. If anybody has a problem, can drop me an email. I will email it to anybody who wants to use it.
Don't see any questions. I did want to go back, Dr. Athey. There was a question about streptomycin and potentially its impact on bee gut health. What do you know about this, and maybe were you able to shed some light on?
Yeah, so I didn't actually know anything about it, but I did spend a little time looking up a few things on that. And it seems like what research is that there has been done, there seems to be a link between antibiotic use and getting to the bees and some increased susceptibility to things like nosema, and then just other issues I don't think the researchers have quite figured out, but just that exposure to antibiotics does mess with their gut biota. And a lot of the research is in antibiotics you're actually giving to the bees for things like foul brood. But there was one that they specifically looked at streptomycin, and it seemed like it made the bees more susceptible to other non-bacterial diseases when they were exposed to antibiotics. But it doesn't seem like from my cursory glance that there's any, that there's a lot of evidence out there yet for that. Most of the antibiotic research in bees seems to be whether or not there are residual antibiotics in the honey. But it is a legitimate concern for sure about the exposure of bees near where you might be spraying antibiotics.
Well, I can add this without the streptomycin or other antibiotic, we will not be able to effectively manage fire blight. And we have been using antibody, not only us, but throughout the world. And always would be a good idea not to use any chemical. You know, any chemical would have some side effect. But in Illinois, all apple growers have been using streptomycin, almost all. using streptomycin, and they have also bees for pollination. And no one really has raised any problem, serious problem. Probably there is some kind of residue in there, and that's antibiotic might be getting into the bees or finally getting into the honey. That's a real possibility. But without antibiotic, management of fire blight is impossible.
All right. Yeah, thank you both. Any additional questions for our specialist today?
I did want to mention one other thing. There was a question about organic insecticides on brown marmorated stink bug.
Mhm.
And I did a little bit of digging, and it seems like, unfortunately, I have a list of things that have been tested. They were tested in tomatoes, but it seems like a lot of the organic insecticides we have available work okay in the lab, but once you get them in the field, they're not really effective against brown marmorated. So they use Organic, Azadirect, Zara, Entrust, Impede, and Venerate, and none of them seem to be effective against, in this particular study, against brown marmorated stink bug. Again, that was in tomatoes, but in the field, they were really good in the lab, but when they got them out in the field, there wasn't really a lot of effect as far as that goes, which is not great, but I just wanted to follow up on that question.
I can add something else too. If really person worries about having antibiotic in the honey, might use really wild bees for pollination rather than the honeybees.
There was a follow-up question. What about Azera? Any thoughts on Azera as an organic pesticide for brown marmorated stink bugs, I believe?
Yeah, so Azera was in that study, and it wasn't particularly effective. But again, that one was in tomatoes, but yeah, Azera didn't seem to be effective either, unfortunately. And I can continue to look into that. I just had a little bit of time to see if there's more studies on some of these organic pesticides. The one thing that seemed to kind of work weirdly was Surround for the nymphs, which I would not have expected, but at least in that study, Surround kind of, which again is kind of odd, but yeah, I can continue to look into those as well. But yeah, and that one Azera didn't work either.
Right. Any additional questions for our speakers today? Don't see any in the chat box, so I think we're gonna.
How many? Looks like about 22 persons left. I would ask the growers, anybody had any serious disease problem in the apple orchard in the north last year?
Yes, feel free to you can unmute yourself, or in the chat box, please, please feel free.
I don't see anything in the chat box. Because I was there several times, but particularly in late August, early September, I did not see any disease. I was just wondering if I missed anything and the disease came a little bit late or early. I didn't see it. But it seems to me everybody was very happy in 2020.
All right, well, well, thank you both for joining us today. We certainly appreciate you all contributing and giving us these valuable updates for fruit production. Our program is going to continue tomorrow. We will have high tunnel production with Bronwyn Ailey. This will be tomorrow at noon to 1 p.m. And then next Thursday is going to be our vegetable series. And so this will be with Drs. Babadoost and Dr. Athey, yet again joining us for cucurbit insect pests, conventional cultural control techniques, as well as outcomes of the recent research studies on cucurbit and tomato diseases. So thanks yet again to our sponsors, Rep Seed, Syngenta, as well as McHenry County College's Center for Agrarian Learning. And we appreciate you all joining us this afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you at tomorrow and potentially next week's program too.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, thank you all.